guess we'll just jump right into it if that's okay with you.
Sure, whatever you want. You're driving this, baby.
Awesome. So you began your career in sketch comedy on the iconic Almost Live that aired on King TV, and you were there for 15 years. So take me back to a moment in time when you realized that you wanted to work in TV.
Okay, so I got into television in a very organic way. I went to the UW and I graduated with a degree in speech communication. So I didn't really have a focal point of what I wanted to do or be.
Right.
When I got out of college, I worked for a while at Nordstrom in the corporate side. I took an acting class at Seattle Central, and that was a real pivotal point for me, probably 1984 and 1985. So that got me interested in the arts or performance, just kind of a shift, which I'd never done before. So I started doing that. And then I met Joe Guppy, who I ended up marrying, but I met him. He worked at the Cornish College of the Arts in the admin building. And I had seen him perform because he was in a group called Off the Wall Players. So I'd seen him on stage, but I didn't know him. When I went to his office looking for somebody else, there he was sitting at a desk. And I said, I'm looking for so-and-so. By the way, I've seen you on stage and you're really funny. So, we met, I gave him my phone number, we started dating. And at that time, he was just starting to get involved with Almost Live, which was about 2 years into its life at that point. So as he's getting involved with Almost Live, now that I'm taking acting classes and kind of getting into the acting thing, whenever they didn't have women on staff of Almost Live, they did a few times, but not consistently. So when they needed a woman to play a part, and it must have been a time when they didn't have a woman on staff, he would ask me, can you get off work? Because I still worked at Nordstrom. Can you get off work Thursday at 2 or whatever and come to whatever location to be in a bit, just to play a part in some sketch? So that was how I started in television. I didn't have any designs on it, and it started as a performer. And so then I did that a little bit. I ended up really liking doing that, and I wanted to be hired on the show. But the only way to be hired is you had to write. You couldn't just be a performer, because there's a lot of actors in town, and a lot of really good ones, but there's not as many people who can write sketch comedy. So I worked on some material, put a packet of information together, none of it particularly good, but good enough that I got hired as a staff writer and performer. And that was in fall of 88. And that was the start of my career in television.
Wow, that is really organic, like you said.
It's super organic. I mean, lucky.
Yeah, nowadays people have to have agents and stuff like that. So that's
exactly.
Really
Yeah, I always tell people I had about enough talent and a lot of luck and a lot in timing, right? I was in the right place at the right time, and I kept saying yes to whatever opportunities came my way. And so they developed into that, which is really, I think, a key for anyone. You have to kind of keep taking the next indicated step, go through the next open doorway or the open window. Because you never know where it's going to go.
Exactly. Taking every opportunity.
Yeah.
So when did you first start interviewing people on television as a host?
So my whole career, from that point, from Almost Live 88, Joe and I were on the staff of Almost Live together for a season, and then we moved to Los Angeles, and we went down there to work for television down there as writers. We were hired as a writing team. We worked on a show for HBO. We got an agent, and we got the agent because we had a job. It's that weird catch-22. If you don't have a job, you can't get an agent. But we were hired from Seattle to go there for this HBO show. So we had some credibility, got an agent. And then we just kept moving around to a bunch of different shows, most of which were not particularly great. But they were work. I learned so much. You really learn, feet on the ground in the midst of doing things. I learned how to write. I really learned how to write because that's what we were mainly doing. So when we came back to Seattle in the early 90s, I got back involved with Almost Live. Joe wasn't really interested in that anymore, and I was. So I got back hired on Almost Live. So I stayed with Almost Live from that point till when it went off the air, which I think was 1999 or 2000. I never quite remember.
Okay.
But in that span of time, that 8 years or so, I started doing little, let's see, how would I put it? These little hosting things on Kong TV. So Kong is owned by King. King bought that or got a hold of it or whatever it was in the mid 90s. And so it was channel 16. And they put the kind of programming they put on that channel was just like old TV shows and kind of public access, public domain kind of movies, things that were cheap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they asked me if I would host it. So it would be me on, like, hey everybody, to camera. Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to whatever it is. Hey, here's what we got going on today. Coming up is the Lone Ranger or whatever it was, and I'd give a little information about the show, and then they would, play the show or play the movie. So that wasn't interviewing, but what that was me being myself versus me being a character on Almost Live, because everything I did on Almost Live was sketch, right? So it's like SNL. You're always playing a character. So I'm kind of playing around with being me on camera. And of course, you always turn up the heat a little bit when you're on camera, no matter what. It's not like if you saw me in my living room, Erin, on a Saturday afternoon, I'd be just kind of slumped, on the couch. Of course, you get slumped when you're on camera, even as yourself. But I was still fundamentally being my own person. Yeah. So that I started getting that kind of experience, layering that kind of experience into what it's like to be on camera as me. And then, what was the next show? Then I started doing a show. Almost Live went away, and I was hired to do a show called The Salmon Exchange.
Okay, never heard of it.
It's called The Salmon Exchange. It was UW TV, and it was an environmental show about salmon. Now, they hired me because I had some personality on camera. They certainly didn't hire me because I knew a lot about salmon or the environment or anything else. But I was, I guess, the every man or every woman type accessible. So I did that. And in that show, I did do interviews. I interviewed environmentalists. I interviewed conservationists, whatever it might be. So I started doing, that there. And then after that, I developed what is essentially Art Zone. It was a tiny little show called City of Go-Go. It was a 5-minute version of Art Zone. And that was me going in and doing little interviews with artists and still, again, just being on camera, talking to the camera as if it's a person. I'm communicating with a person. That's what that camera is. And it was just more experience of moving through the world in front of a camera as myself and interacting with other people. So I didn't have a lot of interview training or anything. It was really kind of just in the moment, whatever the job demanded. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you mentioned that they liked your on-camera personality, yeah. So you must have to have some sort of persona that you put on. But I know you, and I've seen you on set, and I've seen how just spontaneous and hilarious you are naturally. So I can see how that translates well on camera.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's hard for me to kind of quantify that because it's me, but at the same time, it would be false for me to not acknowledge what you're saying. Of course, I know that I have an energy. Of course, I know how I'm kind of moving on a set. I know how I'm interacting with people, even when it's off camera. And maybe this is an interesting little piece of information. Mm-hmm. When I walk, you were there at so many of our shoots. When I would go into the door of the stables, Georgetown Stables, mm-hmm. I walked in and I was immediately on. And by that, I mean, I was on to be aware of everyone in the room. I always acknowledged everyone. I always tried to make sure, say hi to people, even those people on the crew. And I'm sure you know who I mean, who would just be flat, no affect, or, no response. But I knew I had to connect with everyone. I had to kind of infuse this energy, right, because I have to have it in order to do what I want to do. I need the room to be activated. So that's a really important part for me to connect with everyone, hopefully have everyone in a decent mood or feel seen or have a positive attitude, because that all comes back to me when I'm trying to do what I'm doing, which takes a whole lot of energy to do, you know?
Right. It's funny you say that because my first impression of you, I was already on set and you weren't there yet. I was sitting down in a chair just on my phone doing social media, and you came up to me and you were like, "Hi, I'm Nancy, blah blah blah," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's so nice!" Like, wow. It's funny that you say that because it really did bring up the energy on set
Mm.
that day. It was the Benicio Bryant
Oh, right. Yes.
energy that day was just through the roof, and it was just a great experience for me as my first day as an intern on ArtZone.
Well, and I just want, let me speak to that, that I believe that that's the crucial piece of, that's the crucial piece of life right there. For me to come and say hi to you, of course I'm going to. First of all, it's your first day. You don't really know anybody, and it's extremely important that you understand that you're welcome, and we're happy you're there. I'm happy you're there, and I'm talking just human to human. You know,
Right.
it's not like Nancy's talking to the intern. I mean, that's the bullshit piece of it. That's bullshit. It's all about connecting as people. And when that happens, and I think when people feel seen, they always rise to the occasion.
Right.
Always.
That's good. So good. So moving on,
Yep.
you interview artists, comedians, musicians, public figures. The list goes on. So talk to me about your preparation process and what you do to sort of prep for an interview.
Yeah. So I tend to have this, I've in the past, I've had a tendency to, I just kind of want it to all come together. I don't want to have to think about it because it's a lot of work. So let's start with that. I have to organize my thoughts. And the way I organize my thoughts is I talk out loud. So everything, just so you know, I mean, when I email, I talk out my emails. Everything I do, I'm always, because it's always about like, how does that sound? What does that word sound like? What does that make sense? So when I start, let's just say I'm going to interview Benicio. Let's use him as an example. Well, first of all, I try to get information about him, and in this case, Rosemary and Kate, producers for ArtZone, you know, kind of pulled some stuff for me. But then I'm going to start digging around myself and just finding kind of like basic storylines about him, what's kind of his background, and then I start just writing out what do I want to know? Well, obviously we want to know about America's Got Talent. Wasn't that what it was? Yeah, America's Got Talent. Was it The Voice? Or and he's from Maple Valley. Okay, and he's got a dad who works for the Mariners. Okay, and he's so and so age, and he did this thing with Brandy Carlisle. So I just kind of start throwing down bits and pieces of facts, and then I start to try to write out, well, what would that question be? What is it I'm trying to ask here? And I can also have a tendency, Erin, to have a question, but really it's almost more like it's a statement. It's not really a question. So then I have to go back and go, well, what is it I'm trying to get here? And that's just the hard work of like making my own thoughts clear to me. I mean, you can't just throw all the spaghetti you can throw the spaghetti at the wall, but then you have to really pick and choose what noodles do you want to stay up there. If it's just a big pile on the wall, it's all just jumble, right? So then it's just a matter of like honing and honing and honing, you know, getting things clearer what the question would be. And then I'm looking at the flow. Okay, if I'm starting here, and you also have to always think about your audience. So like with TV, if the viewer, I have to think about, I need to give them enough information to know where they are and what they're about to see, but not so much that I'm taking away a story or info that really it would be a billion times better to come from the guest, right? So I'm kind of I'm setting the stage for the viewer. Okay. And then I just try to get the order of questions. And I use Joe, my husband, a lot to go over them with me. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Okay, how can I say this better? Okay, is this the right order? Okay, what can I get rid of? What can I get rid of? What is fat here? Okay. You know? So that's some stuff.
Do you memorize your questions?
That's such a good question. I don't memorize I hate to memorize, first of all. I hate it. I hate having to remember exact words. And it's interesting because, Erin, I'm a complete and total control freak. So I also want to have everything perfect, right? But
Right.
I find the sweet spot. I think because I write the questions, because it's in my language, I go over them enough, I read through them enough, not to get like every dotted I and crossed T correct, but I get it, so I'm very familiar with the material. So when I'm sitting there, I can, it's actually amazing to me sometimes that it turns out I will go through an interview and I basically gone through it in order and kind of basically asking how I had them laid out, the questions, but I wasn't necessarily aware of it when I was doing the interview. I didn't know that I mean, I don't know, did I skip this? Did I skip that? And sometimes I might, but I'm just super familiar with the material. I think that's a huge thing. The more familiar you are, then you can go off script, then you can improvise, because you really ground it in the foundation. If you're not sure exactly what you're going to say and you're not really clear, then you're going to be nervous and you're going to get tight and you're not going to be able to think in the moment, you know? So I don't memorize, but I'm wildly familiar with the material, highly familiar.
So my next question is, I know some hosts, like maybe Ellen DeGeneres, they brief their guests on sort of the questions that they're going to ask. Do you like to do that with your guests on Art Zone?
Okay, so this has changed this year. No, I hate doing that. I've always hated doing that. I've always felt like I'm asking them what they know. I want them to just be free and not feeling burdened by any answers they've pre-planned. You know, you don't want that. But I've learned something this year, because I think it might have been Benicio. I don't know if it was Benicio, but there was somebody I did that with. Oh, you know, it was a guy, the Queen of Neon. Remember that guy I interviewed about all the neon, that designer of neon signs like Dick's and Ivers.
Salt water. I can't remember, but yes, I do.
Yeah, no, you're thinking of a piece that Chris did. It was an interview of the woman in the 40s or 50s who designed Dick's Drive-In, Ivers, Fish and Fist. Yeah, so she designed signs. Anyway, so the guy I interviewed for that, I walked through the questions on the phone. I didn't send them to him. I didn't say, here's the exact wording. I would say, you know, I'm thinking I'm going to maybe start with this. What do you think? Does that sound about right? Like, and then I would check out a few questions, like, what do you think of that? And again, I wouldn't give them verbatim. And they might say, oh, you know, I don't know. I wouldn't know that answer. Or, so it was really helpful that then in the midst of the interview, they didn't get a question that they didn't understand, and which would have been fine. We could cut around that. Right. But I learned that I think it's good to brief people to a degree so that you're accurate, so that you don't have incorrect information. And there's a few times in the last 3 or 4 months when I've done that with these interviews, where I was like, they would say like, oh no, that's not right, or the title isn't quite right, or no, that's not quite accurate the way you have that. And that was so helpful. So I think on a talk show like Ellen or Jimmy Kimmel or Colbert or whatever, they have those story. I mean, the actor or the person coming on, they know exactly what they're going to be asked, which is different from what I do, because we don't have a live audience. But I think it's good for, unless you want to surprise people, and I can still throw in surprise questions, and I do, it is really good for them to have a basic understanding. And even when I do go over stuff with them, like a pre-phone call, they're not going to remember exactly what I said. So they're still going to be nervous and uptight, and they're going to have forgotten anyway. But at least I vetted some stuff with them.
Right. So. Okay. That's really helpful. Okay, switching gears now. I recently watched your interview with the filmmakers of Big Sonia, which was from January of 2018. And the film was about the story of a 92-year-old woman who survived the Holocaust as a teenager. And you interviewed actually the filmmakers, Big Sonia's granddaughter and her husband. As I was watching the interview, I just sort of took note of how it was heavier than a lot of your lighthearted interviews. And I was wondering, what changes did you make when you prepared for a heavier interview like that?
Well, yeah, you almost can't get a whole lot heavier than the Holocaust, and a woman who survived the Holocaust and lost her family in the Holocaust and saw her mother go to the gas chamber at the camps. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
beyond belief. So, so for that, I mean, I think the preparation is the same in terms of just, you know, questions, and it's just the content, the subject drives the attitude and the tone, right? So already, I mean, when you since you watched the interview, you saw how we do those. They come into my house. I mean, did you how they yeah, so then, and that's charming and all that. But then I start to just I start to match their energy a bit, you know.
Yeah.
I know where we're going. I don't know what they're going to say exactly, but I know where we're going. And so I got really, I think I got quieter. I think I said less. I really watched jumping in. There was a pace, everything kind of slowed down.
Yeah.
So I think really it's just an awareness of of the subject matter and the gravitas of the subject matter. The preparation would be almost identical.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't know, there was just something different about it, like you said, and I think it was the tone. I think it was how you slowed it down. I was like, this is phenomenal. It was so good.
Yeah, I really liked that interview a lot. I felt like it was really strong, and I think one of my weaknesses is I can be speedy, I can be quick, I can be jump, and that's partly my personality for sure, and it's also probably a little bit of nervousness that gets going. So that's and I can talk too fast. These are all things I've always dealt with. So those are kind of those are tendencies that I have to watch, and certainly in that environment with that interview, that would have been wildly inappropriate.
Yeah. So on your show Art Zone,
Mhm.
production team Rosemary, Kate, and Peggy do an amazing job at illustrating the interviews, as we've seen,
Yep.
in a way that sort of narrates the interview with pictures and videos.
Yep.
I'm wondering, do you have this in the back of your mind when you're doing your interviews?
Well, I mean, knowing that I've got such a great creative team of people, and Peggy is really off the charts in terms of her visual ability and knowing how to visually support what's being said. She's light years beyond anyone I've ever worked with. She's phenomenal. So since I know that, I can kind of get a little lazy or a little kind of relaxed, because I know for a fact that we're going to find the stuff. That said, when I'm writing questions, when I'm coming up with, I'm always like, okay, what are we going to have for this? If I ask this, are we going to have the things we need? I don't necessarily know what the specific imagery will be, whether it's stills or video, but I know we have to have it. So that's when Kate, me, Rosemary talk or with Peggy, and we just, make damn sure we've got what we need, and sometimes we don't, which drives Peggy out of her mind, and then she just gets more weirdly creative. So I'm aware in terms of, I know we need material, and if there's something that there's literally no way in the universe we can support it, and it's going to be a long answer, I'm probably not going to ask it.
Okay, got it. Moving on again, recently with the COVID-19 pandemic, the Seattle channel had to suspend the production of Art Zone, as we talked about, and it's become Art Zone Phones In. So you didn't necessarily have to go back on air, but you did. I'm just wondering, have you learned anything new hosting a show virtually?
Yeah, I've learned a lot. The reason I wanted to do that is that I didn't want Art Zone just to go. I didn't want it just to go away, right? Because honestly, the truth of the matter is, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows if anything's coming back? I have no idea.
Right.
But I thought it's not going to be for lack of attempting and trying on my part. So, so what I've learned is, first of all, it's really fun to do it on the DIY. It's very fun.
Yeah.
I am learning. Joe and I are shooting it on iPhone. We were editing it on iMovie. Joe's basically learned how to do iMovie editing in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it's been. I mean, it's kind of astonishing. I like so I like learning these kind of new skills, and I'm learning learning iMovie too. I'm going to learn how to edit. I've never had to learn how to edit. This is forcing the issue. This is forcing me to learn something that is really, really an important skill to have. It's only going to be useful going forward.
Yeah.
And I like the informality of it. I like, I enjoy, I mean, Joe and I have such a long history together, obviously married, but creatively we're very in sync creatively. So we've had a lot of fun coming up with bits. It's basically comedic little things that we can do, and very much based on our relationship. And I haven't done that for a long time, and that has been super fun. So it's been, I've been creatively juiced up in a way that I wouldn't have expected that during this time. You know, it could easily have been me just sitting around with nothing to do and not sure what the future looks like. I don't know what the future looks like, but I know I can make something happen.
Yeah, it sounds like you and your husband have sort of gone back to your roots, right? Together again. And
Totally. And in fact, in the new episode that's going to come out this week, we have a commercial parody. We have a sketch essentially in it. It's ridiculous.
Yes, I'm excited to see the sketch.
You might like it.
Come back.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, you're also known as a comedian, and you have a natural way of adding comedic relief to your interviews. From being on set with you, like I said, I know that that's sort of just how you are, but I'm curious, like, when do you know it's okay to make a joke in an interview?
Yeah, I don't always know. I don't always know. But I think and this is one of the reasons why, I mean, I work at this really local level, right? Everyone I work with or deal with they're not a celebrity. Most people aren't. So I have a lot of we're all on the kind of the same plane. So I have a lot of access to people, right? So most people, not everyone I know, but a lot of people I know, or I know people who know them or something. So there's some sort of connection. Plus I've got a long history of doing television. So I've got I have a profile, and that's really, really helpful in the community. I have some people, you know, to a degree, I'm a known commodity.
Absolutely.
So when people come on set, I mean, it can happen beforehand, like a pre-interview or something. When my whole goal, first of all, before we even get behind the camera, or before the camera's on us, excuse me, I want to get as close to them as possible. I want to be as goofy with them as possible. I'll be saying like, oh, you know, someone might say, oh yeah, I'm kind of nervous. And I always like, oh God, everyone's always nervous. Everyone's nervous. I said, like, I get nervous. I said, and by the way, I'm going to be the one that's going to screw up. Believe me. I mean, so I play everything very loose, you know, like, and, you know, of course, you know, we're just talking about what you know, and it doesn't, if you don't like your answer, we can redo it. So I just act like, nothing really matters. That's kind of how I try to do to kind of calm them down, which also is kind of, then I'm getting closer to them, and so that we have something going on. So if I can get that going, then there's more freedom in the interview, even though once the cameras start rolling, the tension rises. Everyone gets a little more tight, you know, a little more like, oh, the camera's on. And that's just natural. There's no way to get around that. But if I've done enough of the pre-work where I feel like I've got something going with them, then there's more opportunity. I might see a moment in the interview where I can kind of grab it. I might be able to say that. And I'm also always looking to say things that are a little bit, you know, absurd, or, you know, kind of break the fourth wall a little bit, or make a joke about myself, you know, just something that isn't what they expect, but also certainly not going to put them in a weird position or be really mean or something like that.
God, it's so funny hearing you say this, because I'm just having flashbacks on set, and you know exactly what you're doing. I'm thinking about when Benicio, you were like, yeah, I'm your crazy aunt, and just thinking about like all the times you come in and you're just so goofy, making jokes with the guests, and I'm just like, wow, this is just Nancy, but you know exactly what you're doing.
Oh, so yeah. That's that thing, Erin. It's a what's the word? It's a heightened myself. So it's not a persona that isn't me, but I know exactly what I'm doing. And and I can tell if it's working or not. I know if it's, and as long as I also, if I take a lower status, right? Like I'm the Guppy, I'm the crazy aunt. I don't know what I'm doing. I will look at a person before an interview starts, and I'll look at them, I'll kind of go like this. I'll like, I don't know. Like, so I'm like, I don't know what the fuck, and then they'll kind of like smile, and then we go. And, I don't know what they're feeling inside, but what I'm trying to communicate is like, what the hell, here we go. And so that is all very much worked. It's almost second nature to me, because if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have any fun whatsoever.
Right.
I really wouldn't have any fun, and I'd be nervous and I'd be uptight, which is why I don't like to talk very much to celebrities, because I don't have any access to them beforehand. And there's a lot of intermediary, everything's really tight and you can't really talk to them beforehand, and you don't really, I can't stand it, because for me, it's all about a human connection. It's all about that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, 2 more questions and then I'll let you go.
Yeah.
So in a 2014 interview with Medium, you said, and I quote, "I've gotten better at what I do. I have had a lot of background in local television, but being myself on camera, as much as I enjoy it, is also a skill to learn."
Yeah.
So obviously you've done this for a long time.
Yeah.
So what is the best advice to like learn the skill of being yourself on camera?
Yeah. I think the one thing, and it is that you learn how to do it by doing it. You can't learn it in a class or have it kind of shoved into your head or to your body somehow. You can't, there's nothing that makes up for experience. Just, there isn't. So God, I would say practice. If you want to practice,
Yeah.
practice interviewing people, practice talking to people. Doesn't have, camera doesn't have to be there. Kind of practice how you would try to pull something out of someone, because really what I'm doing is I'm pulling stuff out of people, right? That's what I'm doing. And I'm trying to listen. Listening is a super key too, as well. So it's like my goofiness is kind of a, I don't think that came, I don't know what came first, Erin, the goofiness or the ability to be on camera. I'm not sure what they kind of dovetail somehow together.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, let's just take the camera away from it for a minute. How are you yourself anywhere in life?
Right.
It's really, do you know who you are? Do
Right.
you know how you are in the world? Do you have a sense of self and a sense of confidence in yourself? It's not so much what you're showing. It's kind of, I think it's coming from somewhere within, and people can smell authenticity.
Yeah.
And even though, like you said, I know exactly what I'm doing, I'm also doing it for real, right? I'm being the dope for real. I mean, it really is me. I'm just kind of playing that little part up of myself right now.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, figure out who you are in everyday life.
Right.
And there's skills about being on camera, looking at the camera, looking at the person, knowing how to listen, knowing how to not talk all the time. You can learn all that. That's learnable. But your own sense of self, that comes from living.
Right.
And awareness, and trust in yourself. You have to trust, and you have to fail, and by fail, I came up with a great, at least I think it's good. The other day I was thinking about the word failure, and I thought, of course it's true that there's failure. I mean, when people say there's no such thing as failure, well, yeah, there's failure, but I think it's not a negative. I think failing is every time I try to do something that I don't know how to do, I'm chipping away a little more at what I don't know. So I'm taking a little more away of what I don't know and getting a little closer to things I do know, or adding what I do know, taking away what I don't know. So that's just one step in front of the other, one step in front of the other. So know yourself, learn how to know yourself, know how to be honest with yourself. Don't be afraid of looking dumb. Don't be afraid of looking dumb. Don't be afraid of saying the wrong thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Really important. Really important. It's not going to kill you, and it's certainly not going to. No one's going to remember.
Yeah. How did you get the confidence to just go crazy on camera and just be yourself?
I think it's over time. I mean, I'm going to be 60 at the end of June.
Yeah.
I've been doing this, starting with Almost Live since 1985.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, so how many years is that? 35?
Yeah.
35 years, 85, 95. I'm not good. No. Yes. Yeah. 35. I'm like, wait, what is it? 45? It's 50. Oh my God. I'm 80. Holy crap. I'm 80. Yeah. So I've been doing this for so long. I mean, when people say like, oh yeah, they were an overnight success, they had at least 10 years. Every single person who ever made it had at least, anyone you talk to, any star will tell you that. Like, oh yeah, suddenly I just came out of nowhere. That didn't happen. That did not happen. So I've had tons of experience. And I think I've had also enough positive reinforcement. I've been supported. I work with people who believe in me, who like me. I mean, I don't just discount that or downplay that. I need to feel liked. It sounds like it's kind of a trite word, but it's kind of true. I need to have a friendly, warm gaze and vibe around me to be able to do my best work. I wouldn't have done well on I never liked anything that was a much higher stakes or more national TV or that kind of thing. I never liked that. It's just, I'm more comfortable in a little environment with people that I know really well, that I can, that I'm familiar with. So that really is important.
Yeah.
For me, that's important for me.
Absolutely. And I think one of your producers you've known for a while, right? You grew up with?
Well, yeah, so Rosemary I've known for a really long time, but the producer you didn't meet, who I founded the show with, who created the show with me originally, her name was Sheila Mullen. There will never be a producer of that caliber for me ever. And that doesn't mean Kate and Rosemary and a lot of other people I've worked with aren't great. They are. It has nothing to do with them. Sheila was in a class by herself.
Wow.
And I never would be doing what I'm doing now, ever, without her.
Wow.
There's no way. She would of course argue that, because she tends to argue anything that gives her a positive compliment. But yeah, she's phenomenal. She's phenomenal. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
So my last question was going to be, where do you see yourself in 5 years? But I realize that's sort of a dumb question now because of the coronavirus. Right. Nobody really knows what's even going to happen.
No, nobody knows. But what I'll say is I plan to learn how to edit. I plan to keep doing probably some sort of version of what I'm doing right now. I highly doubt, Erin, I highly doubt that Art Zone's going to come back how it was. The reason I say that is it's a budget issue. I don't know, but I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong about that. But I will keep being creative. That I know. That's what I like to do the most in the world, is be creative in some way. And that will not stop.
Absolutely.